Nope.
What is up, guys? This is AlintheaYoh coming at you today, yes, with a deck profile, the first one I've done in so long, and it is one that you have all wanted for God knows how long now. It is my updated version of the Counter Fairies. Now, before I go into it, Counter Fairies is a very, 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 very difficult deck to build right now. Finding the balance between if you want to play Cardinal Eyes build, if you want to play a Ties of the Brethren build, then also a mixture, then also a more specifically Sky Sanctuary build, or anything like that. It's very difficult. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a couple of builds for you guys and show you them throughout the next couple of weeks. So you can see the different types of builds. So this is just a Ties of the Brethren build with the Sanctuary in the Sky stuff. So without further ado, we'll go straight into it so you can see it. And it has been a very long time since I've done this. It feels really weird. And I don't know really what to say, but we'll give it our best shot. So, starting us off. So this is typically the... well, this one is specifically the least monster count version. You know, you don't run too many monsters just because you're not running the Ties of the Brethren build. So Bountiful Artemis is still run at 3. I've seen some people cut it to 2. You don't want to do that. You need to get this card, especially not with playing Ties of the Brethren. You want to see this card as soon as possible because it is one of your main combo pieces to get the draws. So it's basically whenever a counter trap is activated and resolves, you draw. Guiding Ariadne is the next one. Still playing it at 3 in this build. I have actually tested cutting this completely, and it has its uses in some builds, but in this one, it's still really useful to be able to not pay the cost of counter traps. So Guiding Ariadne is at 3, don't really need to say too much about that one. Next up, one of the brand new cards, we have Minerva, Scholar of the Sky. Minerva's basically has 2 effects. Well, it has a couple of effects, but mainly the effects that you really care about is every time a counter trap is activated and resolved, it gains 500 attack and defense, and this stacks. So this card really helps you get over some of those decks and some of those boss monsters that typically you would have trouble getting over. So Minerva's really good for that. And whenever a Sanctuary in the Skies are on your side of the field and a counter trap is activated, you can add a counter trap from your graveyard to your hand that isn't the card you activated. So if you activate a Drastic Drop-Off, you can't add a Drastic Drop-Off from your graveyard to your hand. This is really, really good. It helps recur a lot. If you have this and Bountiful out, it's just pluses all day long because you're just constantly recurring your hand. The good thing is as well that sometimes counter fairies can run out of steam, and this card really helps you to gain back that advantage because not only are you activating those counter traps, it means that you can really just recur them, add them back to your hand, and you keep getting a big beat stick on your side of the field. So keeping it at 2 for this build is good. It's not necessary simply because it does require other cards to really flourish. The 500 attack defense, as I said, is really good, but you know, on its own, whereas Bountiful, you know, does do things on its own, this just giving you that attack doesn't keep up the advantage. That's why you have it at 2 in this one. So yeah, that is that. Next up, we have the one Herald of Heaven. This is just because I'm running a Sanctuary in the Sky, and I'll talk about that in a little sec. And then finally, we play one of the Sacred Arch Knight Parchef. Sacred Arch Knight Parchef. This card is the boss monster and is incredibly good. So if you don't know what it does, whenever a counter trap is activated or an effect that negates spell or trap cards, you can banish 2 fairies from your hand, field, and or grave, special summon it from the grave. It does piercing damage, and then whenever you do inflict damage to your opponent through this card via battle, you get to search your deck for a card, for a counter trap, or I can't remember because I hardly ever search it, or a Parchef card, that's it. So you can search the continuous spell card that counts as Sanctuary in the Sky. So this card is absolutely amazing, and I only keep it at 1 because otherwise it would get too cloggy. It's a decent card if you do run some other discard cards, because this can be a potential discard card cost, but it's really good because it helps you, again, put an established boss monster on the field, and you'll see how you summon it with one of the counter traps in the deck. And not only that, it just allows you to keep recurring your boss monster. If you do have the new spell card that counts as Sanctuary in the Sky, which I'll get to in a little bit, it gives it an extra 500 attack boost, so it becomes a 3/3 beat stick. Pretty big. So I just keep it at 1 because that's all you need, because you can recur it. And I'm not playing Pot of Desires in this one, so there's no chance of me banishing it. So they are the monsters. So coming up, we have the new spell card that is Sanctum of the Pasha, hence why you can search it with the previous card. Its effect is basically counter sanctioning the sky while it's on the field. Fairy monsters you control gain 300 attack and defense. Sorry, the other one get 3-1. I thought it was 500. Silly me, still thinking of the Minerva. Sets spell and trap cards on the field can be targeted or destroyed by card effects. And then once per turn you can target 3 fairy and or counter traps in your graveyard with different names. Put them on top of the deck in any order. So there's 3 very important effects there. Counter sanctioning the sky on the field. Well, 4 actually. Cancel sanctioning this guy in the field, gives all fairies extra 300 attack and defense, which is actually really decent because it then bumps up your Artemis to 19, bumps up your Minerva straight away to 20, even puts Ariadne on a lovely 20 as well, so even if you do summon it. So there's some good reasons to have that there. And then not only that, you get to protect your back row, which is actually something that a lot of people do forget about. It's not the biggest effect that you would actually think of. It's not the biggest thing. I guess it's pretty nice if your opponent's running Twin Twister. They can only really target that. And maybe you're sanctioning the sky in the fields. But even if they do that, you're probably going to negate it anyway. So if they regardless if they're targeting your back row, your set ones or your face-up ones, you're probably going to negate it anyway. So it's a bit of a weird one for me, that. The one that I hardly ever use is the actual put 3 cards back on top of the deck. So that's only if I'm starting to get low and there are decent cards in the graveyard that I actually want. But it does mean that it's only really useful if you have Bountiful up, because it means that you can draw into them straight away. So it is pretty good, and it's obviously the type of build that you're going for, so that's why I'm running 3. And yeah, it's a pretty good card. And then 1 Sanctuary in the Sky, just the reason is because I have 4 names, and with the Zeratus as well, it keeps me from clogging. I did test it 2, and it just really clogged horribly and I hated it. So 1 was actually pretty fine, didn't matter about that. Next up we have our 3 Cardinal Eyes. Of course we have Cardinal Eyes, the new secret rare print, which is lovely, doesn't bend as much as the gold, or as the Ultra, sorry, even though they are getting a little bit bendy. Anyway, Cardinal Eyes, what can I say? It's one of the pivotal cards of the deck. You need to open it as much as possible, and you need to get it as much as possible. It does horribly conflict with Tides of the Brethren, and that's why a special build is needed for that, which I will do, don't worry. I know a lot of people will want it from me. 3 Pot of Duality. You don't really special summon this deck much at all. The only thing is the Avenging Out Pasha, and that's normally done in your opponent's turn, so Pot of Duality is one of the key drawing cards of the deck, so it's really, really good. A lot of the times if you do open up with Duality and Card Demise, you will set everything, activate the Card Demise, then do the Pot of Duality. Just important to note, because it just means that you can select a lot more what you're going to be getting depending on what you've drawn. It's just a better way to manage your cards. And then finally, a Monster Reborn. You know, it is quite nice to have, taking your opponent's monsters more so than your own, because if you'll probably take a beat stick, you're establishing your own board. It just helps you kind of move along with the duel. So yeah, it's 1 Monster Reborn. Then going on to the traps in the deck. We have, and I'm going to do this all together because it's lovely, because it's finally, I can show you the Solemn Brigade. The Solemn Brigade, I do miss saying that. I used to say that a lot back in the day. But this is a Solemn Brigade. Yes, I don't have ultis. I'm sorry, they're like ridiculously expensive right now and I can't be bothered to get them. If the next ban list hits and they don't get limited or anything like that, I'll probably pick it up even if it goes to 1, but still, I'm not picking up 3 right now because I want to see what happens. Regardless, you play this. This is amazing. You play as many of these as you can. This is ridiculous. You get some of the combos you can do. It's not even a combo. It's just the fact that it's here and a card to be used. Solemn Judgment is insane. 4,000 life points is still a lot, but you know, if you have Ariadne up, it's for free. If you have Minerva out, you add it back to your hands. If you activate another count trap that's in your graveyard, it's just so good. So the Solemn Brigade is alive and well. It's really good. I could actually see Judgment going to more. Not actually that many people are running it. So next up is Drastic Drop-Off, one of the key fundamental cards of the deck. And by the way, I'm going through the counter traps first and then the support cards, which you'll see. So Drastic Drop-Off is actually amazing. You run it, it's a counter trap deck. You have to run this card simply because it's a guaranteed activation unless your opponent is under Reckless Greed, is what I always say. If you have this and Bountiful out, you draw straight away when your opponent hits their draw phase. You activate it and obviously draw. If you have Minerva out, you get a free card back to your hand. It's just an also good way of doing a Yatterlock, or a mini Yatterlock. Because you have this and you have Minerva out, you'll have another counter trap most likely. So you activate this, Take a card out of your opponent's hand, then you'll be activating another counter trap. You add this back to your hand, then your turn, you set that. You just keep going and keep going and keep going and keep going. So you take a lot of cards out of your opponent's hand over the time that you're using it. So it's actually really good. Next up, one you might not actually expect from me. We have Grand Horn of Heaven, and I know those secrets golds, and alright, they're not very nice, but regardless, I have to play them. A Grand Horn of Heaven is actually one that has surprisingly been really good in testing. It's a great card for a side deckable card as well, but I like running it in the main because it's a real kind of curveball to your opponent. If you don't know what it does, it's a counter trap, and during your opponent's main phase 1 or main phase 2, when they would special summon a monsters, negate the summon, and if you do, destroy that monsters, and then your opponent draws a card, but then that phase is ended. So if they're in the main phase 1, you end it, and they go to their battle phase. If they're in the main phase 2, you end it. So you see how that is. It's a really good disruptional card, and that's the whole point of the deck. It's also really nice because it helps you conserve some of your resources. So if you haven't necessarily opened very well, you haven't got a lot of resources, you want to kind of keep back a little bit, this is a great card because it means that you force your opponent into their battle phase, and then it means that they're probably not going to be attacking you at that point, so you can protect your monsters. They have to go to their main phase 2 and they can't establish a... Well, they can potentially try and establish a board, but then they'll be open to what I want to do in my next turn when they possibly can't do too much or take advantage of it if they're trying to kill me. So I really like Grand Horn of Heaven, but as I said, depending on the deck that you do go against, it is a good card to side out or side in, depending on how you want to run it. Next up, one of the new cards, we have Rebirth of Pasha. Now, this is a card that actually I could run at 3, but I like it at 2 just because of the recursion in the deck that I can do. If you don't know what it does, it's basically when a spell, trap, or monster effect is activated, reveal a counter trap in your hand, then discard 1 card in your hand and pay 1,000 life points. Negate the activation. If you do, shuffle it into the deck, and then you can special summon a Pasha monster from your deck or extra deck. Card is absolutely amazing. It takes a new level on top of Ultimate Providence, for example. So, something I just want to break down, because a lot of people ask me this. If you have Guiding Ariadne up, what do you need? So if you have Guiding Ariadne up, obviously you don't pay costs. The cost of the card, well, the activation requirement, sorry, is to reveal a counter trap. So you have to have a counter trap in your hand. Everything after that, you don't need to do. You don't need to discard or pay the actual life points. You have to have a counter trap in your hand to be able to resolve the effect. This lies a little bit of a problem with the card. Why? Because you're running Card of Demise. You're not going to have any cards in your hand. And you're probably going to set this. Hopefully you'll have set this. And the amount of times that I'll get to this and be like, oh, I've got Card of Demise and this. That's a bit annoying. I have to rely on things like Bountiful Artemis or Minerva to be able to get me there. But it's a very important thing that if you don't have that and you have multiple counter traps in your hand, keep one back if you have this, because this just allows you to gain so much advantage. It gets you the Avenging Enat Partius out of the deck, or it gets you the Synchro in the extra deck, which I'll show you in a second. So this card's really powerful, really good. I'm running it at 2 currently just because that's the build, that's the way I like it. And it's working well, as I said at the start. Well, I didn't say at the start, but this deck's probably running really well, probably the best out of all of them so far. 2, Divine Punishment. And you might be thinking, hold on, where is Ultimate Providence? Is that coming? No, Ultimate Providence isn't in this build. I'll explain why. Divine Punishment and Ultimate Providence are the same card. Regardless of what you want to say, they are the same card, they do the same thing. Ultimate Providence is technically more live because you can activate it whenever, as long as you have that same type in your hand. And this, you have to have the Sanctuary in the Sky or the continuous spell that requires it to be, well, makes it a Sanctuary in the Sky. The build I'm going for is Sanctuary in the Sky. That is the way that this deck revolves and is centered around. So it makes sense to have this. I don't have it at 3 because it clogs. I have other cards in the deck, which, like this, that do the exact same as Ultimate Providence and Divine Punishment, because they're basically just negate anything that you possibly can. So there's no reason to run Ultimate Providence as well as maxed out on Divine Punishment and maxed out on this, because that's 9 cards that you need a requirement for. And this is the problem that a lot of people do. They think, yes, I have so many Infinity Barriers, I'll just throw all of them in. You're offsetting the balance of the deck, and it means that you're going to draw these cards when they are not live, and that is not what you want to do. That is where a lot of people are running into the problems of this deck, and that's why people are bricking. This is why I'm running these ratios, but you forget, I can search all of these. I can recur them back to my hand with Minerva. So you're not necessarily needing to max out a lot. So that's why running it at 2 has actually worked really well. Now here's the last counter trap card before I go into the last 4 support cards. And this is a one that you might also think is a bit of a surprise. Broken Line. Yep, I'm running it. I'm running it at 1. And there is a lot of theory behind this. So, when a spell or trap card or monster effect is activated in the same column as this card, while this card is set, negate the activation, and if you do, destroy that card. So if something is activated in the column, you can negate it. Why am I running this card? Surely this seems like a ridiculously stupid thing. Divine Punishment's better because it does the same thing. All this, blah, 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 blah. Right. This is a free, pretty much guaranteed activation. One thing that you do with this is that you will always put it in the column where the extra deck zone is, pretty much, unless there is a suspected spell or trap card or monster effect on your opponent's side of the field in a column that you already want to kind of get rid of. This is really good because it mind fucks your opponent. It really does. The reason why is I'm only running 1, because as soon as you show them that and you give up the ghost, they instantly know. So they're going to instantly seek out zones that are not populated by your own back row. That's as simple as that, and that's why I only run 1. But it's good because it keeps them thinking, it keeps them really wondering, and it really worries them as well, especially because you can populate your own extra deck zone, so they have to go to theirs. And if you set this in alignment with that, that means that you have 3 cards that you can potentially negate. So it's a really, really good card. At 1, you wouldn't run any more in my opinion. And it's also a good card to side out because it means that they'll probably catch on at that point. Once you start getting down to low cards, they'll just be activating it in zones that you haven't populated. So it's a good card that you can actually side out simply because they'll have caught on by that point. So that's the idea about running that, and it's actually worked really well. Next up, we have 2 Storming Mirror Force. Card's great. It just allows you to be on the bit of the defensive. It's a good card in general, and I like it at that. So that's one of the defensive cards. And the other one is Bottomless Trap Hole. This is the one I'm running. I'm running it at 2 just because of space constraints. And it's decent for me, pretty much. When eventually Compulsory Evacuation Device would go to 3 or 2, I'll run it instead of this. Because it's an activation, guaranteed activation. I can activate it whenever I want. I like having that amount of control. This, not so much, but it does help me potentially run against some problem monsters that I might come up against. But either way, this is good. Also, again, a good side deckable card that you can take out. So that is the deck. It's main deck 40. As I said, it might not be something that you're expecting this type of build, but there are multiple ways to build this deck. And there are multiple strategies in it, and you have to be very specific to those strategies, otherwise you will break. You're trying to do too much, it's not going to work. So that's why there are certain card choices in this one, and you'll see the other ones that I have further down the line. But this is the one, honestly, that has been working the best for me. I've bricked the least amount with this, and I feel pretty comfortable about this one. So going on to the extra deck, we have 2 of the Avenging Air Knight Pasha. So the reason why I run 2 is because there's a maximum of 2 I can potentially bring out. If I have Avenging Air Knight Pasha, the normal monster in my hand, and I've drawn into it, I can't summon it with the counter trap. So this is why I have 2 of these, just in case. But you know, it's alright, it doesn't really do much, it just does piercing. It's about it. That you really, really care about. Once per turn, you can change the battle position one face-up monster your opponent controls is about it. You never really use that effect. Next up, 1 link is just Decode Talker. Hey, everyone celebrate. It's the first link monster I've ever used in a deck profile. And Decode Talker. Decode Talker is, you know, just the standard one that you would actually use. I don't really see any reason why you would run other ones because it just doesn't work right now, in my opinion. That's not the point of the deck. You never use your extra deck anyway. So next up, we have 2 of the Utopias. This is just because, again, you hardly use your extra deck, and when you need to, Utopia Lightning is actually a really good thing to fall back into, so that's why you have them. 1 Hotline Draco, actually really good because you do have a lot of face-up spell cards on your side of the field, going from Ariadne to your field spell and continuous spell cards, so that's why it's good. Rebellion Dragon, just to get over. This is just all really generic stuff. Giant Hands, because, you know, negation's good. Babushka, because, you know, it's a great card. Illuminescent Knight, just if you want to redirect certain things that you opponent might be targeting, and then finally Castel. There's one that I don't have, is Tornado Dragon, and I would run that instead of, let's say, Illuminescent Knight, you could say, or just any of them you can really replace with. So that is it, guys. That is the deck profile. finally, I know you've all been asking. This might not be the one that you expect. I know a lot of people are looking for a Ties of the Brethren build and things like that. I will do one, don't worry, I will do an actual Ties of the Brethren build because it is an interesting spin on the deck, but I'm keeping to the core of what I've always used to run. This is the type of deck that I ran when I topped at Nationals, and that's what I wanted to showcase first because that's basically it. So I'll do another one, or I'll do a couple of different ones as we go forward. And, you know, talk about the pros and cons. The nice thing about this deck is it's really generic, and it just works well, in my opinion. I haven't really bricked with this one. It's ran well. It's put up a good fight against a lot of decks and done really well. There are so many counter traps out there that you can run, like Recall. Curse Seal of the Forbidden Spell is a really good one. Depending on the meta, you can main it, but definitely side it because there's always spell cards that are good. So it's just about how you want to run the deck, what the meta is looking like. That's the problem, because there's no real set way to run this deck. It's just what is going on in the meta right now and how can I counter it. So that's it, guys. Let me know in the comment section what you think of the deck profile. How do you like it? Which one are you liking so far? And yeah, as always, let me know down there. Make sure to give me a like, comment, subscribe, and I shall catch you guys later.